Huh?
Did you turn it on from here? The mic?
Yeah, but it was like it's usually these two, but like it's not working. So
Is it not
whatever.
there?
I don't. There's too many things going on.
I'm just gonna start. Can you guys hear me? Our mic thing doesn't work, so if I'm speaking too quietly, just let me know. So today we're gonna be talking about collection views. Going over some logistics. Just like again from last week, virtual office hours are now set up on Piazza, and if you want an extension, make sure to ask at least 24 hours before it's due. So like on Saturday. And then here we just we noticed like two really awesome submissions from Project 3, so I just want to give like a quick demo. Philip and Yan Lam, are either of them here? Oh, awesome! Both of you are here. Okay, nice. So so let's see. We're gonna look at Philip's first. So when you open the app, you have like the fade in animation with the drawing arena, and then you click on an arena. You have a couple different things. You have like the text field with the name, and then you click on the shape. You can change the shape that you want to draw with. So like circle, you can change the size, and then let's say I wanted to make it a square, you can do it like that. Yeah, very cool. And then you can also erase. So if you just tap with them, they go away. So very cool. Nice job. And then the second one is how do you pronounce your name? Yan Lam. Okay. Here, so we have this application. If you click on it, it's just like your normal, like, project. And then if you go back and then toggle this, it becomes a whole different application. So if you look at this, this allows you to control like the height, I believe, the width, and then like it changes colors, and then this like changes the opacity. This changes the opacity of like the next shape. And then you can also undo a drawing or erase it. Yeah, just like also looked very nice. So, are you taking the design course? Very nice. Yeah, so like really nice job. So if you do well on your next project, you can show up here. Okay, so going over some review from last time. For those that still have the pull app, can you join the group?
I got it. I got it. I got it. Do I just
Should wait for them to
Okay.
come in first. If people join.
Yeah. Can you see who joins?
No, not like specifically.
Oh.
You can start it now.
Okay.
Two of these made up of. Yeah, just start. Yeah.
What's the session code?
UQ0 TRI. TRI, like toy, rocket, and
Ice cream.
ice cream. Yes. Okay. Uh, 10 more seconds. All right. Oh, you can share it as well. So the answer is C. Does anyone want to explain why? Okay, I can explain. So yeah, so table views are made up of sections, and then within sections you have cells or rows. They're like synonymous. Inside these cells and rows, you can have any kind of view you want, but yeah, the breakdown is sections and then cells and rows. And then next question. Yeah.
This one's hard too.
Yeah.
Very difficult. How many seconds?
Can you just end in like 5 seconds?
Okay.
Don't share the results.
Okay.
Does anyone wanna give their answer? I'm gonna pick on someone. Yes.
D.
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 Why do you think it's D?
Because others are essentially, instead of setting up a your table view, you, in terms of setting up the model, you need to know how many rows there are going to be and how many sections there are going to be. But the height for row, I think there's a default height set in with the cell item, and that's as well would have to be initialized.
Not exactly the answer I was looking for. Like, does anyone have a different answer? Yeah.
I guess B.
Yeah, B. Why do you think it's B?
Because you don't have to click on the row. Right?
Yeah, so like, number of rows in section, cell for row, and height for row are still like the minimum amount of information that you need to give the table view in order for it to fully construct it. Whereas for selecting a row, sometimes you don't want anything to happen, so that's the optional method. I think maybe what you're referring to was like auto resizing cells. We haven't covered that yet, so yeah, the answer is B. We could, yeah. Answer is B. Just going over some review for table views, just because collection views are like very similar, and I want to make sure you guys understand how table views work. So table views are used in applications to display a list of items in rows. So like think about like your Spotify music player or Apple Music player. Everything is like listed out in rows, right? And so when we initialized our table view, we had this line where we did like table view dot register some class for some reuse identifier, and all this means is if we're planning to use some custom table view cell in our table view, we have to let the table view know by registering it. And then this cell reuse identifier you can just think of as like a way for the table view to have some ID attached to this class. So for example, if we made an alarm cell, we could set the identifier to be alarm cell identifier. Any questions on that? And then there's also like the concept of reusing cells. So like imagine for this alarm app, I had like 1,000 alarms. It'd be very expensive to create 1,000 table view cells at once, because that would just like slow our application down when you scroll. So instead, how table views work is they only instantiate the number of table view cells that you'll ever see at once. So in this case, it's like 7 or 8, and then once the cell at the very bottom goes off the screen, it gets reused for the cell on top. So that's how we like solve the problem of like having to create like 1,000 cells. Dequeuing cells is also like in our cell for all method, you had this line where we did let cell equals table view dot dequeue reusable cell with identifier. And all that does is it gives you an instance of an alarm cell that you can use. So like instead of actually creating an alarm cell by calling the init function, calling dequeue reusable cell gives you like that reusable cell that you can use. And you notice that when we registered it, we use the alarm cell identifier. You have to make sure that if you're using alarm cell in here, you also use the same identifier, or else your application will crash. Any questions about that? And then we also had these like two lines, table view dot delegate equals self and table view dot data source equals self. And all that means is we're setting our view controller to conform to two different protocols, UI table view delegate and UI table view data source. The UI table view delegate is used to provide information such as like how tall each cell should be and what should happen when you select on the cell, which is like, as I mentioned before, optional. And then UI table view data source provides the table view with the information it needs to construct itself. So like how many cells should be in each section, and what cell to display in each row. So by default, table views have one section, but even in that section, you have to tell the table view how many cells should be in there. And these are like the method equivalents. So like height for row at, dislike row at, number of rows in section, and cell for row at. And then just like go over the cell for row at, just because I feel like it's like very important to understand how this actually works. If you notice that for all these table view methods, you have access to this index path object, and all you really need to care about with this index path object is the section and row property. So like imagine for a table view we had 5 cells, or we told it to create 5 cells. What that means is it'll call this function 5 times. The first time, the index path that section will be 0, the row will be 0. And then the second time, the section will be 0, row will be 1. And then all the way to section 0, row 4. Does that make sense? And then here is just like the self-read code. And then one thing we didn't mention, but you guys probably use this in your project that was due yesterday, is tableview.reload data. So like for your project, what happened is you select on the cell and then you maybe like change the name of the song, and then when you go back, you want to update the table view cell so that it has the updated song name or whatever. What you would do is you would update the song model in your like songs array, and then after that you have to call tableview.reload data in order for that change to be displayed in your table view. And all reload data does is it sort of just recreates all your cells using your data models that you provided. So that's why like when you update the song name and then call tableview.reload data, the cell name was updated with the song's updated name. Any questions about that? Cool. Here's just like a diagram. So you see if we return like 4 rows, if we return 4 in the number of rows in section method, all that does is it'll call self-read 4 times, and each time it'll ask for what cell to display in this section and this row. Cool. So so that's just like the review of UI table views. Now we're gonna start talking about UI collection views. UI collection views is used to display a grid of items. So unlike table views where it's used to display a list, UI collection views are used to display a grid of items. They're very similar to UI table views, just like with some minor differences. Here's like a simple example of a UI collection view. So this is just like your typical Photos app that you have on your iPhones. It's like this grid format of photos, and yeah. Here's a bit more complicated version. Each of these like rows themselves are collection views, and you can like scroll horizontally throughout them. So some just like noticeable differences. For table views, you can only scroll vertically, whereas for collection views, you can scroll in both directions, vertically and horizontally. For table views, you can only adjust the height of each cell, whereas for collection views, you can adjust both the height and the width of each cell. So essentially, a nice way to think about it is like you can create a UI table view using a collection view, but not the other way around. So collection views are generally like a lot more flexible in terms of creating your applications. And this is our application that we're gonna make today. So it's supposed to be like a mock-up Photos application. I just used pictures of Bill Gates and Obama. So here's like a demo. So we have a header, we can scroll, and then when you tap on the cell gets deleted. And then if we have time at the end, there's this thing where you know how in applications you have this like pull to refresh feature? I'm gonna show you how you do that if we have time. Cool. Any questions on anything so far? Alright, cool. So let's go to our starter code. Does anyone have it out? Alright, cool. So in our app delegate, we just have our regular like setup code for our UI window. We're using a navigation controller, and the root view controller is just view controller. So that's what we have here. And then let's sort of see what we have here. Right now, I declared a collection view variable that's of type UI collection view, but we haven't set it up yet. And then for this collection view, we're going to use an array of data models that I called person. So let's first create that person class. So create a new file, new Swift file, and then create. And then we're going to declare a person class. And then this class is only going to have a profile image name. So this is the name for this person. And then let's create an initializer for that. So profile image name of type string. And then in the net, we set self.profile image name to be profile image name. Cool. And then now let's go back to our view controller file and uncomment the person's array code. And then in here we can, let's make a Barack object, person, and then I think the image name is Barack, so just put in Barack. And then we're gonna use Bill Gates as our next person, and then the image name is called Bill Gates. And then for our persons array, we're just gonna be using multiple copies of these, so let's just do Barack 3 times, and then Bill Gates 3 times, and then copy and paste this. Everyone good? Cool. So now let's start setting up our collection view. So we do collection view equals UI collection view, and then we do open parentheses. You see this constructor that takes in the frame and a collection view layout. We're gonna want to use this constructor. For the frame, we're just gonna put .0 because we're gonna be setting the size and position using auto layout, so we don't have to worry about the frame. And then for the layout, we actually have to create a UI collection view layout. So for collection views, when you want to display items in a grid, the layout you want to use is called UI collection view flow layout. And this just allows your collection view to display items in a grid-like format. So we can just pass this layout into here. And then inside this layout, we can actually customize several different properties. So one is the scroll direction. So here you can either set it to be vertical or horizontal. We're going to do vertical for now. Another thing we can set is the layout.minimum inter-item spacing. So if you read it, it just says the spacing to use between items on the same row. So if you look at our application, that's just like this spacing. How much spacing should be between these items that are on the same row? We're just gonna use padding, which I defined on top. And then the last property is minimum line spacing, which is the space to use between different rows on the grid. So that's the spacing between this and this. We want it to be the same padding because we want it to look like the Photos app. So we're just gonna set that to be padding as well. Any questions? Cool. So now let's continue setting up our collection view. We have to set translates auto resizing mask into constraints to be false. Let's set the background color to be white. And then just like table views where you did table view.delegate equals self and table view.data source equals self, for collection views they have a delegate and data source as well. So delegate is of type UI collection view delegate, and data source is of type UI collection view data source. So now that we're saying that we're conforming to it, we have to add it to our view controller class. So just do UI collection view delegate, UI collection view data source. And actually, when you conform to UI collection view delegate, you also have to conform to UI collection view delegate flow layout. I'll explain what the difference between these two are later. And then the next thing we want to do is register our custom cell class. So we actually have to make that. Let's make a new file, Cocoa Touch class. We're gonna want UI collection view cell, and then let's call it photo collection view cell. Create. So in here, we're gonna want to override the init method. So just do init frame, and then because we're overriding this method, we always have to call super of that same method. So super.init, and then pass in the same frame. And then you probably saw this in your project, but whenever you override an init function, you're also gonna have to implement this. So just click on fix, and then you can just leave that down there. So if you look at our project, each cell is just gonna be an image view. So we have to declare an image view. I think there's like some code here. Yeah. So I called it photo image view. So if you go to your view controller on the bottom, there's like some commented out code. Just like copy that. And then let's put it in here for now. So our image view is going to be called photo image view. UI image view. And then we can put the setup code here. And then for our constraints, we're putting our constraints in the update constraints function. And let's copy this over. Does anyone remember why we add the image view to the content view instead of just doing add subview? Yeah.
Isn't the content view like the view of that cell?
Yeah. So like, I mean, technically you could also do add subview, but Apple made content view specifically for the purpose of adding any subviews you want for yourself. So just always add it to content view. So this is a setup code, and then let's also create a configure function that we're gonna call later, and it's gonna take in our data model. So in this case, it's person, and our person has an image name. So all we want to do is set our image view's image property to be a UI image, and then the name of this image is the person's profile image name. Yeah.
Why do you use with person?
It's just like so that, I mean, because we know what the data model is. You could also just have done this. It's just that it looks nicer if you do like configure with. Like, it's just, you don't have to. It's just like easier to read when you read the code. Everyone good? Alright, so now let's go back to our view controller file, and then we have to register the cell for the collection view. So do collection view register, and then we have the register cell class for cell with reuse identifier method. So the cell class is going to be our photo collection view cell .self, and then the reuse identifier. I declared a variable up here, full cell reuse identifier. Let's just use that. And then lastly, add it to the subview. And then we can also uncomment the code and set up constraints. This just makes it so that the collection view is like basically the size of the whole screen. Cool. So now let's go to the bottom. So remember how we like conform to delegate data source and delegate flow layout? We actually have to implement those methods now. So for when you conform to the UI collection view data source, there are two methods you have to implement. They're very similar. So like for table views, you had cell for row at and number of rows in section. For collection views, the equivalent is cell for item at and number of items in section. So like the table view row equivalent is a collection views item. So you have section and item for collection views, and section and row for table views. So does anyone want to tell me what I should return in the number of items in section? Yeah.
Person's array dot count.
Yeah, so we just want the number of cells that we want is just the number of people that we have, which is just the count of this person's array. And then for cell for item at, we're first gonna dequeue a reusable cell. So let's do let cell equals collection view dot dequeue reusable cell with reuse identifier and then for index path. So here we want to get a photo collection view cell. So we have to make sure to use the same identifier that we used when we registered. So it's going to be photo cell reuse identifier. And then for index path, we just pass in the index path. And then because we know that this is going to be a photo collection view cell, we can force cast it to be photo collection view cell. And then now I'm going to want to get the person data model that we're going to use for this specific cell. So we're going to do let person equals persons array. Does anyone know what index this should be? Like what index of the array should I be using? For like table views, it was like index path dot row. For collection views, it's just index path dot item. Because the item and row are like the equivalents for table views and collection views. Next, we're gonna call our configure function that we made that takes in the person object, and then we can just pass in our person. And then last thing we need to do is make sure to call cell.set needs update constraints. What this does is it just calls your update constraint file function, which is where we place all our layout code. So that makes sure that our subviews and our cells actually get laid out. And then return the cell. Any questions on any of what I've said so far? Cool. So let's first do UI collection view delegate flow layout. So when you conform to UI collection view delegate flow layout, the method that you can implement is this side for item at. You can just think of it as the equivalent of like the height for row at, but here you just return a CG size, which takes in both width and height. So here we're actually gonna have to do some math. Let's see. So if we want this to like be equally spaced out, the width and height should be the same, right? And let's say this padding here was like 8 pixels, then the width of each cell should be the width of the whole collection view minus 2 of the padding divided by 3. Does that make sense? No? Does that make sense? So like, all right, it's just math. It's not important. So we're gonna do let width equals collection view dot frame dot width. So that gives you the width of the whole collection view, and then we're gonna subtract the padding. So minus padding times 2. So now that gives us like this plus this plus this, and then we want 3 cells in each row, so we divide by 3. So put parentheses over that, and then divide by 3. And then we're going to return a CG size using the width and height constructor. The width is just going to be width, and the height is going to be the same thing, because we want it to be like squares. Cool. Let's actually try running that and see what we have. Oh, cool. So, does everyone see this on their laptop? Who does not see this? Oh, actually, who sees this? No one sees anything. Okay, perfect. Yeah, but this should be what you guys see on your laptop. So we have our collection view, and then you see like everything's like equally spaced out, and the size of each cell is like a square. So now let's add the functionality where when we tap on the cell, that cell gets deleted. So that's gonna be a part of the UI collection view delegate. For table views, you have did select row at. For collection views, you have did select item at. So does anyone have an idea of how we can do this? Like when we tap on the cell, delete that cell. So for your project, when you updated your song name, what you guys do? You guys updated the song, the song model's actual name, and then you called tableview.reload data. For here, when we want to delete it, all we have to do is remove the actual data model from our array. So in this case, we just want to remove the, let's say I select on the third cell, I want to remove the Barack Obama data model from our persons array. So all we have to do is do persons array dot remove at some index. So if I tap on the cell at index 2, I want to remove the person at index 2. So that's just going to be with index path.item. And then if we run this and then see what happens when we click on it, nothing should happen because when I click on it, it deletes this, it removes it from the array, but it doesn't update the collection view because we never told it to reload. So we have to also do collection view.reload data. Now when we tab on it, it should disappear. Perfect. And right now it's not like scrolling because the collection view, there like aren't enough cells for it to be like scrolling. Something you can add is this line called collection view dot always bounces vertical, and set that to be true. This just makes it so that it always like has a scrolling effect, even if there aren't enough cells. So now it like bounces. Whoops. Cool. Any questions so far? See, you can actually build photos. It's easy. Well, not exactly, but. All right, now let's make this. This. Wait, you don't see it here. This header. So like right now this collection view is just like one section, but for each section you can actually have a header and footer, which is like what that header thing is. So to do that, let's create a new file. Let's make it Cocoa Touch class, and then the subclass is gonna the parent class is gonna be UI collection reusable view, and then I'm just gonna call it header view. So this header view is just gonna have a label. So let's just make a label of type UI label. And then we also have to override the init again. So do super.init with the frame. And then it should complain, I think. Yeah. So just click fix and then just leave that alone. And then here we can like set up our label. So label equals UI label. Let's set the text to be header. Oh, we also have to do translates all resizing to be false. We can set the font to be let's make it 20 and then make it bold. And then here we can just do add subview. So again, the reason we don't do content view is because content views are only used for cells. UI collection reusable view is a subclass of UI view, so you can just do add subview. And then we can have our update constraint function again, and then put in our constraint. So ns layout constraint.activate. let's make the leading equal to this view's leading. So it's just leading anchor. And then let's set the center y to be equal to this view center y. So now we actually only need to set these two constraints to let our application know where to put our label. If you don't set the width and height, what your application will do is it will just like auto resize the label depending on what text and what font you have. So we actually don't have to put width and height. Cool. Does anyone still need that screen? Alright, so now let's go back to our view controller. So just like how we registered a cell class, we have to register this header view. So we do CollectionView.register. And then this time we're gonna be using the register view class for supplementary view of kind with reuse identifier. So the view class is just going to be our header view. And then to let our collection view know that we're gonna be using this for the header, you have to type UICollectionView.element kind section header. So like just one for footer, we're gonna be using header. And then the reuse identifier, I declared a variable as well, so you can just copy and paste that. Header reuse identifier. So now that we've registered the header view, we actually have to like return it inside our collection view so that it actually gets displayed. So this is going to be a method that's a part of UICollectionView data source. Just like if you type in view for supplementary, it should like autocomplete. View for supplementary element of kind. So here, instead of dequeuing cells, we're going to be dequeuing our UI collection reusable view. So in this case, let's just call it header view because we made a header view. And that's going to be equal to collectionView.dequeue. So instead of dequeuing a cell, we want to dequeue a reusable supplementary view of kind. The of kind, we use the same UI collection view.element kind section header. Reuse identifier is our header reuse identifier. And then index path is just index path. And then we also know it's going to be a header view, so you can forecast that to be header view. And then now we have like instance of our header view. And then we don't have any configure function, so we can just do header view.set needs update constraints. And then return the header view. So like very similar to self-row, except we're dequeuing a reusable view. So now that we've returned the header view and the collection view, we also have to give it like a size. So the method for that is called reference size for header and section. So this is just expects you to return a CG size, which is the size of your headers. So we're gonna return the CG size of. We want it to be like the full width of our collection view. So we're just for the width, we're gonna do collection view.frame.width. And then for height, I think I have a variable for that. Header height. So we're gonna make it 30. And then we can just return that. And then let's run this and see what we have. Oh, so now we see our header. And then let's see how it looks like if we make it horizontal. So like right now we've only been doing vertical. We can also just make it scroll horizontally. It's probably gonna look weird because it's not designed to be horizontal, but yeah, there we go. So if you want to do it horizontal, you obviously have to change some stuff like the size of the header and yeah, I think that's it actually. And then if you tap on these cells, they also get deleted. Looks kind of ugly, but it's fine. Cool. Any questions? Okay, and then now we can do the last like pull to refresh thing. So you've probably seen it in like a lot of different applications where like, for example, me like Facebook or something, you scroll to the top of your news feed and then you pull to refresh, it fetches some data and then your feed gets reloaded. We can do something similar with collection views. So first let's set the scroll back to vertical. And then here we can declare a new variable. So that spinner is actually called a refresh control. So we can make a variable called UI refresh control, which is of type UI refresh control. And then before our collection view code, we can like set up our refresh control. So refresh control is equal to UI refresh control. And then just like for buttons where you can add a target, you can add target for refresh controls. So for target, it's going to be self selector. Let's call the function pull to refresh. And then for the event, it's going to be for value changed. So that just means that it's going to call the function whenever we trigger the pull to refresh. Or whenever refresh control gets triggered. So we can implement that function at the bottom. And we can fill this in later, but actually let's add a print. Pull to refresh. So now we've set up our refresh control. Now we have to attach it to our collection view so that when you scroll to the top of your collection view, it actually triggers the refresh control. And that's just like a one-liner. So you just do collection view dot refresh control equals to our refresh control. So it's actually just like one line. And then we can run that. Now if you pull up and let go, you see our pull to refresh. Except it doesn't actually ever end because we never set it to end. So let's put that logic in here. So typically what you would do in here is you probably like make some request for updated data. So like for feed, for example, you get some updated feed posts, and then after that you call reload data on your collection view or table view or whatever. But we don't have that, so we're just gonna mock the delay. So just do dispatch queue dot main dot async after. You don't have to know what this means. You're never gonna use it, but this is just to make our app look nice. So what this does is it takes in a block of code and then runs it after some amount of time. So I want it to run 2 seconds after now. And then here we can just do self.refresh control.end refreshing. And then that just like stops the animation. And then let's run that again. And then you pull, and in 2 seconds it disappears. Cool. I think that's it. Does anyone have any questions on collection views, table views, anything? So let's see. So for action items, the next project is due on Sunday as usual. After lecture, is it out already?
I'm gonna post it right now.
After lecture, we're gonna have a poll on Piazza about what topics to have for the last few lectures. So you guys can vote on which topics you want, or if you have any suggestions, you can just put it on the comments for that Piazza post. Yeah, project 5 is like you're essentially building a mini version of Eatery. So, good luck. No, I'm just kidding. It should be fine. If you have any questions, you can come up. Yeah, that's it for today.
Please vote. It's up on PR.